So when I get up, I feel this gratitude. When I get dressed, I feel like every single moment is just immersed in this beauty. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of No Filter with Kate. This is a series on my YouTube channel where I dig deep into some spiritual, philosophical, existential questions. Some of these questions are your questions that you have sent me on Instagram, and then weave all these topics and these questions with my personal experiences and my personal beliefs. This series is meant to be like a one-on-one with me where we got the tea or coffee and we get to reflect and contemplate really important topics. So in today's episode, we are covering the question of why are we here? What is the meaning of all of this? What are my spiritual beliefs? The topic of abortion. By the end of this episode, you will get a list of books that have shaped my thinking, books that are very much related to the topics that I'll be addressing, and books that will help you on your path. All right, so let's dig in. So, the first question that I got was, what are your spiritual beliefs? Why are we here? What is the purpose of life according to you? No pressure. If I am to think about the meaning of life, honestly, I don't have any dogmatic beliefs. Everything that's structured by uh, the umbrella term of religion, I don't resonate with at all. What I do believe, however, is that every single human being carries this divine code that's deeply seated in our DNA. We are here to experience that and allow this divine code within us to flourish and to expand and to live to that full potential of embodying the divine. Whether a person is actually doing this, living to their full potential or not, is a whole other conversation. But what I deeply believe is that each one of us carries something incredibly potent and incredibly powerful that's constantly there speaking to us, guiding us. Maybe it's, the universe, or uh, you can call it God, although, again, I don't like using terms that are overused in the church and all these religious institutions. If we go to the core of our truth, which means also going to the core of our true desires, our true passions, once we connect to our inner truth in such deep ways that there's no longer competitions, there is no longer forcing, there's no longer doing things out of um, obligation. I think we reach that core of inner divinity. And it's always there, it's always speaking to us. It's this inner guidance that helps you on your path. You might hear it, you might not hear it. And I also feel like we all came here with that little mission planted deep inside of us by the universe. I believe that we all have some form of mission that will serve the divine orchestration of everything. And then the question, why are we actually here? Why all of this? Honestly, I think that we are all here to guide each other back home, as they say. On the grand scheme of things, we're here to serve Earth, and we're here to serve each other as well in ethical and in sustainable ways. So, being of service, how are you contributing to the expansion of human consciousness, right? That's like one of the questions that I ask myself personally whenever I'm doing whatever I'm doing. I very much believe in intentional living. So whenever I sit with my projects, with my actions, I always ask myself, how am I contributing to the expansion of human consciousness? And being of service, um, and whether, I'm not saying volunteering or anything like that. I very much believe that there should be, we are part of a capitalist society. So I'm very, very much an advocate for any type of compensation. I think you can very much do things, um, take actions, run projects where you are being compensated and it's still coming from your core and it's still coming from your passion. I feel like there is an all-knowing force that some people call God, and it's there and it's guiding us, and it's also internally we are a little piece of that divine source, and we are an expression of that divinity as well. So why don't we act more like that, right? That's really a question to the collective, acting more from that space of knowing that you are embodying the divine and you are here to live up to that full potential. And whatever your mission is, if your mission is to bake bread or build houses, or your mission is uh, helping people with their finances, whatever that is, if you find your dharma in it, then you're on the right path. It doesn't need to be Mother Teresa's uh, mission, right? Everyone has their own unique. If you want to serve your community, your little village, that's perfect. As long as you're impacting just one person, is all that matters. So I also very deeply believe that we are here to have the best time of our lives. We are here to have the best time ever. Once upon a time, I was very deep in Buddhism. I thought that, I finally found the philosophy that explains the meaning of life. I believe that this is the answer to everything. But then I really felt into it and I no longer resonated with the Buddhist philosophy because the Buddhists believe that it's all about suffering. Life is suffering. And although I get it that everything goes back to attachment. Everything goes back to we're constantly attached to things, so we're constantly suffering. Yeah, I agree. But I also think that the purpose of life is not just dealing with suffering and learning how to, detach, although, yeah, detachment is really important. I deeply believe that we're here to just like have a continuous orgasm when it comes to just living life. I like using the metaphor of making love to life. When I get up, I feel this gratitude. When I get dressed, I feel like every single moment is just immersed in this beauty. It's immersed in this feeling goodness. Even during moments of challenge, I remind myself that it's not just an upstream, it's supposed to sometimes feel uncomfortable. So in my opinion, this is how you shape your experience of life. It's how you shape your uh, own meaning. So making sure you show up in full authenticity, making sure you show up in your full power and you try and access your full potential. The meaning of life is such an interesting question because I feel like every single person creates their own meaning. As I mentioned, for me, it's just, I think we're here to have a great time, but also be of service, but also be the stewards of the land, but also find a mission or tap into your inner mission, your dharma. That's a code in your DNA. I feel like this is a code that lives within each one of us. We all have access to it. But sometimes in this lifetime, we don't choose to have access to it. It's really important that you tune into your own understanding of what the meaning of life is. For some people, it's raising children, it's continuing their lineage. For others, it's running a big company. They find meaning in that. For then others, there are so many activists out there that are trying to save the planet, who are trying to make sure that we have clean water, that we have a food supply that's sustainable. So knowing what is the meaning for you? I don't think there's the meaning of life can be put in a box. So if you ask me what is the meaning of life, I have no idea. All I can say is what I perceive is the meaning of life. And as I have shared, there's a lot of different spiritual beliefs that help me shape my meaning of life, help me shape my understanding of life and my own mission in this lifetime. And that being said, as I mentioned at the start of this question, we all have that particle, that God particle inside of us. We have that divine nature, that divine drive and code to create our own reality, to create our own world. And that is why, as you go through life, you shouldn't be listening to what one person tells you. This is the meaning of life, and that's what you should be doing. No, it's all deep inside of you. You know what the meaning of life is for you. We don't take on people's fears. We don't take on people's beliefs. We don't take the pastor's beliefs. We don't take on anyone's. It's you really connecting to your heart, having all of your values aligned with who you are in your authenticity. And then from there, you build your own reality. Because then everything that you believe about life, your meaning, your own personal meaning of life, then shapes your experience of life. So everything around you will start to mirror that. And that's the beauty of this interconnectedness that's there for us humans. We are all interconnected, and we're all interconnected with nature. Everything is, we're all one, right? As cliche as it sounds. But everything that you believe about yourself, about life, but the meaning of life will be mirrored by the outside. And that is why it's so important that you really reflect on what it means for you. Why are you here? So I deeply believe that each one of us chose to be here for a specific reason, while also being part of Source. Source being the creative force. I think, some people name it God, but I don't think we're fully able to perceive the fullness with our senses. We need to make sure we look into the subtle realms in order to connect with Source, with the divine creation of this whole thing. So, what is your meaning of life? I think the meaning of life, the question of the meaning of life is it's a contemplation in progress. It's a continuous contemplation. And I love it. I love that because every single year I feel like I unpack a little more of what it means to be alive. I unpack a little more on my own contribution in this world. I really remind myself every single day I've got 5 minutes to live. Because, in the grand scheme of things, this is all we got, like 5 minutes. I remind myself every single day, okay, like right now, tomorrow, everything that I'm doing, if I die tomorrow, after tomorrow, will I be content? Would I be happy? Could I say that I did my best? Could I say that I really poured my whole soul and passion into everything that I do? Or will I say, oh shoot, I should have done something different? I make sure to keep myself in check when it comes to my life's decisions. I love reviewing my life every single day, every single month. If something doesn't feel right, I move on. I close a chapter and I'm like, okay, this relationship doesn't feel good. This person doesn't feel good. This first date doesn't feel like the right thing for me. I don't give second chances. I just move on because I know that what is fully aligned with me and with the life that I'm creating and the meaning that I find in life, it will come to me and it will feel 100% pristine. That's how I've been going through life. And that's how I encourage you to go through life. Because what happens in the end is you're going to be on your deathbed, as they use this word, and you want to make sure you look back and you're like, damn, like that was such a fun ride. I loved it. And I did so many things that like brought so much passion and excitement inside of me. This is my understanding of a constant contemplation of the meaning of life. It's constantly checking in with my intentions. It's constantly checking in with what do I want to achieve? What is my personal sincere desires, or what is society selling me that I should be wanting at my age at this time in history? What is my family's desires for me? What is my teachers or my bosses? I don't have a boss, but just tuning into your core, into your authentic understanding of life. No one can tell you what the meaning of life is. All right, second question was about abortion. I want to just preface this answer. The person who asked me about abortion, she was mainly interested in the energetics behind this procedure, and I want to use the name procedure in the whole video because I know there's some shadow banning around this specific word. So what I'm gonna delve into is the energetics behind it. I'm not gonna go into the morals. I'm not gonna say what you should be doing with your bodies as women, but I want to just preface this with the fact that this specific procedure of releasing a child is extremely traumatic. It's extremely stressful for women on their bodies, on their psyches, emotionally, on a spiritual level. Unless you're so disconnected from your body and you're so disconnected from yourself, a woman will always grieve and will always suffer after this procedure. Yes, there are women who seem to be easily moving on and they're fine, it's all good. It's not how it works. It means that the woman really knows how to numb herself if she just moves on without actually feeling into what happened to her. And that being said, I'm also in favor of women's choices. Women are fully in charge of their bodies. No one can decide for us what we do with our bodies. And that includes our room space. No politician, no church, no family member, no one can tell us what to do with our bodies. So I am an advocate for sovereignty. Every single woman knows what is right for her. If she has done the inner work, and if she knows how to listen to her intuition. Because we have that innate inner knowing. This procedure is a dishonoring of your creative potential. The womb space is the space. It's like our canvas for women. It's like our natural canvas. It's crazy to think about it, but that's kind of how it is on an energetic level, right? I'll be using a lot of words just to demonstrate, use examples, very metaphorical language because it's very difficult to speak in energetics. So what happens on an energetic level is like you reject the masterpiece that you have created. Say if you wrote a book or painted a huge painting and then you just burnt it. I know, again, this is very difficult to compare to something like growing life inside of your womb. Very difficult. But on an energetic level, this is what's going on. And yes, sometimes this needs to happen, depending on the circumstances, depending on what's going on in the woman's life. Sometimes the procedure is inevitable. But I think that every single woman needs to contemplate the intentions behind it. What's going on before she goes into it? She needs to really contemplate, why am I doing this? Why am I releasing this part of me, the thing that I have created, the person that I'm creating inside of me? There's a masculine component to this too, right? We grow the person inside of us, but we are initially in the co-creation. Why are we releasing it? Because it's not just a chance coincidence that these souls come into our wombs. And that's another thing that I really want to introduce into this conversation is the fact that every single soul chooses their parents. We chose our parents. And even if you go through the procedure of releasing, you release a child who has chosen you, or the soul rather who has chosen you. Sometimes specific souls come into a lineage to heal the lineage, to upgrade the lineage to the next level. Sometimes they come to heal specific traumas or even repeat specific patterns to then heal karmic things, karmic contract that weren't healed previously in their ancestry. Sometimes a soul comes in and they take on the mission, huge mission of healing the lineage. And some of you can probably relate to this. This is why I love ancestral work and I do so much ancestral work in my mentorship and my coaching sessions, because we all came into this life with a specific mission for the lineage or the parents. Sometimes the parents aren't ready to have a child, and yet the child comes to save their life sometimes. Sometimes the child comes in and, yeah, they're there to teach them a lesson. But the procedure of releasing the child is extremely destructive. It's destruction. I wouldn't call it a murder. I don't want to exaggerate anything here. But it is a procedure of destruction. Dishonoring creativity, dishonoring of your potential, because you built that potential inside of you, and then you're like, ugh, I'm getting rid of it. Even if there's none of these feelings of like, ugh, it's like traumatizing going through this procedure, but energetically, you erase, and that can create many different complications in your spiritual life, in your energetic field. And one of the things that I want to make sure you also understand is that every single uh, child that you release stays in your field. These souls stay in the subtle realms, and they can feed on your life force. And there's nothing really parasitic, there's nothing really negative. They just feed on the life force because they are in a limbo space and an in between life and death. They weren't fully released. No one really knows anymore how to fully release, on a spiritual level, release those souls. We get rid of the physical stuff, but then what happens next? Nothing. They hang out in your energetic field. The souls can feed on you, and they're still part of, they still enter the lineage, so they're still part of the lineage. And what we need to do, we need to fully let them go so they can find different parents. I know all of this might be a lot for those of you who have never contemplated even these things, but eventually, when you release a soul, release a child, they find different parents eventually. It takes a couple of years, or maybe even more, depending on their mission, depending on why they're choosing to incarnate in this specific time. So, what needs to happen when the releasing of a child happens, besides the obvious integration, the rite of passage of becoming a mother, but also releasing completely what you have created? What needs to happen is a ceremony of releasing, where forgiveness is spoken out or asked for, where you ask the soul for forgiveness, where you do a specific ritual to explain to the soul why you chose what you did, the releasing process. It's reestablishment of balance in the lineage that needs to happen, because you don't want different souls just hanging around the lineage in that limbo state, feeding on different family members. It can really mess with the potential of the lineage as well. So there needs to be a specific ceremony, and there are doulas for that. There are abortion doulas. There are just regular doulas who do this work, this spiritual work of releasing, who help you transition into the next stage of your life and release that soul in a more complete level. And it's not easy. It's never easy for anyone. I know that back in the days, we have so many uh, women in our lineage who have done this procedure, sometimes on their own, with their own hands and other tools. Sometimes there was no access to doctors. Some people died from it, right? Sometimes when there's no education around what happens in that space, there's zero education. That the womb has been so obscure in our history that no one talks about that space because there's so much power. And only now, women are becoming more empowered and more aware and more connected to their bodies and figuring so many things out, like of our innate power, but also what happens when we create a being. So see it as that, a dishonoring of your creative potential. And it's not about shaming yourself or beating yourself up if you have gone through this procedure, but it's about fully closing things off, finding closure, releasing the souls, moving on, making sure the souls find the parents that, that will suit them best. So this is how I perceive it, the energetics of this specific procedure. All right, so moving on to the third part of this video. So the books that have influenced me, the books that have shaped my view of life, of the meaning of life. I gotta start with one book that really influenced me when I was 15, 16, and it's The Holographic Universe or The Revolutionary Theory of Reality by Michael Talbot. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but basically, this book really helped me shape my understanding of reality. What this book claims is that everything that we see is just a hologram. And I feel like this is very much in line with my understanding and my belief that every single person has this divine, creative aspect to them, that we are all creating all of this with our thoughts, with our beliefs, with our intentions, with how we perceive what the meaning of life actually is. So, this author goes into quantum physics, into the studies on consciousness, psychology, and he uses some really deep theories from from physics to demonstrate how reality can, everything that we think is tangible is actually, just energy, right? Matter is just energy. I think back in the days when I was like 15 or 16, a long time ago, 15 years ago, for me, this idea was just mind blowing. This book helped me understand that maybe, just maybe, everything is just a hologram. The Divine Design by Lori Ladd is another book that I only read a year ago, but it helped me just shape my view of the world and the planet and humanity as a whole. Lori Ladd explores human evolution from a more mystical but interdimensional perspective. She goes into how and why did we choose to come into these bodies in this specific dimension. For some people, this might be a little too, whoa, I don't get what this is all about. And I get it. It's not for everyone. It's not meant to shape your view of reality, but I believe that it can help you shape your own authentic individual view of life and human evolution. The last book that I have on this list for specifically the theme of life, meaning of life, reality, is The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. Uh, I think this one I read when I was 15 too, and it drastically changed my view of life and the meaning of life and my understanding of reality again. It was published in like 1914. A beautiful exploration of um, the issues in philosophy. And I think what blew my mind when I was 15 and I was in summer camp in Munich, somewhere in Germany, and I remember being on my bunk bed and reading this book. And one of the ideas that blew my mind at the time was how do we know if the people around us exist? How do we know what they're thinking? How do we, why are we so naive and believe that this mic is matter? Again, this whole idea of like matter versus energy is something that I was exploring quite a lot as a teenager and questioning a lot of things and even questioning how our consciousness then influences matter or the creation of matter in front of our eyes. So I think at the time it was the same thing like, whoa, like what if we're just an experiment in the lab and everyone around us is part of the experiment and like nothing actually exists? What if we're just a brain, you know? So all of these thoughts like took me some places as a teenager, and I feel like this book contributed to that. But I encourage you, if you're interested, read it because it's such an old book. It uses different terminology, different language to really dig into the nature of reality. When it comes to women's bodies and women's wisdom, there are three specific books that I have here. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Estes. she explores the archetypes in different fairy tales. And even the villains in the book come with a lesson. So she really explores the ins and outs of the feminine in different stories, like Bluebeard. She goes into myths and stories from Mexico to Eastern Europe, and she really digs into the different archetypes, the perceptions of good and evil in all these stories. Really, really important book, in my opinion, for anyone who wants to go deeper into understanding women's wisdom. This woman really knows what she's doing with the women who run with the wolves. And it also teaches you a thing or two about women's wisdom in the body and intuition. Intuition is a big, big topic in that book. And if you're someone who loved fairy tales when you were a child, you get a really new perspective on these characters that you might have encountered when you were reading fairy tales. Taking Charge of Your Fertility is a book by Tony Welsh. And here, it's an intimidating looking book. It's huge, it's thick. It introduces the concept and the method called the fertility awareness method, which is a natural method for contraception. I personally used it and it works. I've used it for years and years and years. I never had any accidents or whatever you would call it, and it works. And in this book, she really goes into the depths of how much misinformation there is coming from the doctors, from our biology classes, and she debunks all the myths around fertility. And she's a doctor, gynecologist. She knows what she's talking about. It's not just a random person who's writing this book, right? And there's a lot of different ways how you can connect to this specific womb space, to your fertility, to your body as a woman, to know when is the time when I'm fertile, when am I ovulating. It really empowers you in so many ways. I personally gained so much from this book. It helped me so much to understand my body and my own natural cycles. So this is probably the most empowering book you can find out there on fertility, women's bodies, and the wisdom that we carry in our body. All right, dear ones, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you got some clarity and some inspiration on all of these different topics. I'll be filming these videos monthly, so make sure to subscribe and leave any comments below or reach out on Instagram. You can find my links in my profile.